One Question is designed to give subscribers valuable insights on how executive leaders in college athletics think about key issues on their respective campuses, in their departments, or within their leagues and conferences.
Greetings, this is Ty Brown, and welcome to One Question, where we highlight executive leaders in college athletics. Our guest today is Dr. Ron Nowaczyk. Dr. Nowaczyk is the president at Frostburg State University. Greetings, Ron. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Ty. Great to be with you.
Now, Ron, you've been there at Frostburg State for a little over 2 years, and you've been 20 years in higher education administration. One of the things that's happening there on campus is Frostburg is going to join NCAA Division II. And I think you've been involved in that process, and you've been involved in athletics probably since your time being in higher education administration. And one thing I do know about your background is that you're into psychology. You have a ton of research and articles on psychology and really on the human relations process. And as you know, psychology plays a major part in athletics and the effect of athletics on the campus and in that community. How has your background helped you to understand the significance of athletics to an academic community?
Well, Ty, it's a good question. I think part of it probably comes from just being in higher education administration, but in terms of the psychology side, I think the biggest contribution there in terms of my background is having an appreciation for individual differences and understanding what motivates individuals. As you know, I mean, from the many things you've done with athletics and interviewing people, what motivates individuals, whether they're coaches, whether they're players, fans, whatever it is, oftentimes can be different things that gets them excited, gets them motivated, and so forth. So I would say that in terms of the psychology side of things, one of the things I try to pay attention to and listen to, and again, listening is really, I think, a critical part. What is it that really motivates an individual to do well? Realizing that, and not everybody is the same. I'm sure interviewed a lot of different coaches. Not every coach is the same, and being able to pay attention to that and being able to relate to them, to what their goals are, to align it with what you're hoping the institution's goals are, I think are really important.
Right, it is. I like to say that athletics should enhance the academic mission of a university. And it sounds like you understand that specifically when you talk about from that motivation and psychology standpoint.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right on that. And that, again, athletics and the academics go along together. We have different constituencies. I kid with my athletic director from time to time and say that when he's working with some of his coaches, and I've seen other coaches, in many cases, they're like artists. And, the creativity side of things results in individuals having different things that really get them excited, get them motivated, and so forth. And I think coaches in many cases are much like artists are in terms of their personalities.
I agree. Like from the spectrum, right? Geniuses all the way to a little bit out there that you have to kind of work with them a little bit on their personality part.
And as you know, when you know the successful coaches, there are those things that they're able. You're right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now you guys are moving to NCAA Division II. Can you take us into the discussions when that was brought forth that led to that decision, and when they brought it to you and I guess the athletics director or whoever the constituency was that put it on the table in front of you, say, hey, this is what we're thinking about. How did that process play out?
Yeah, Ty, what happened was in our current conference, we had a couple, and again, in Division III, many of the schools, majority of the schools are private.
Right.
And the conference we're in as a public institution, we're in a unique situation, and we had recently two schools at our conference announced they were leaving to join another conference. And at that time, the AD came to me and said, looking at what's happening here, we need to step back to look at our future and knowing where we're going to be going into the future. And one of the things that we had talked about prior to my coming here was the question about whether or not we were prepared or should consider going to D2. So the AD and I decided, let's go ahead and do a feasibility study about whether or not, our facilities, our staffing, our coaching staff, our athletes, and the university itself is positioned to consider becoming a D2 school. I had been at two previous schools. My two previous institutions were both D2 schools, so I was familiar with D2. And that led to us engaging the university community because again, you mentioned earlier that the athletics complementing the academics, it's in my mind very critical that athletics doesn't go out on its own alone on this. And so we engage the university community being very upfront about it, say, we're going to do a feasibility study. We're going to look to see, is this the possible move for us that we might want to consider in the future. So we undertook that, and then at the NCAA meeting in January, my athletic director arranged for us to have to meet and greet the commissioner from the Mountain East Conference, simply because that's the one closest to us. The two closest, obviously, D2 conferences is Mountain East and PSAC. And so we met with him, and we thought it would be just a meet and talk, how things are going, let him know of our interest in, looking at a potential D2 move. And we look at this, what I would call really an academic exercise. And we met with him, and to our surprise, he indicated that they were anticipating a change in their membership this year, and they were interested in Frostburg State considering moving to their conference. And I think, as you know, and I've learned, there are very few secrets in athletics among the institutions. So that took on a new meaning for us when we saw the possibility of moving to a D2 conference in the short run, rather than something that might be, a year or two down the road, or 3 or 4 years. So we accelerated our feasibility study and looked at things, worked with a consultant, actually had a visit from the Mountain East Conference, the commissioner and a couple of their ADs. They were kind enough to invite us to meet with some of their presidents and meet with some of their ADs as well, and visit some of the schools in the Mountain East. And from that, it became clear that this might be a very comfortable and a great relationship. We found a nice linkage. We did, from our perspective internally here on the campus, what I was concerned about, making sure that the campus felt comfortable with it. And again, getting back to the different groups that we work with, I asked the faculty, we brought our governance groups together, and I asked the faculty, I said, Faculty Senate, I need you to take a look and see, is this a conference that the schools we would be competing against you view as academically equivalent or similar to us, and that as a faculty member you would be pleased and happy to be competing against those institutions. So it was not only just the athletic side of it, we wanted to see if there was an academic fit. And I was pleased that the faculty came back and basically embraced it, said, yes, we have questions about moving to D2, which is legitimate. But at the same time, having been at other schools, I know that many times institutions are compared by the conference they're in athletically as well as academically.
Right.
So that made me feel good. And I think the biggest thing for me was when we talked with our student athletes, and we talked about the fact that moving to the Mountain East, and again, these are D3 athletes, although I will tell you that in terms of competition, I think we'll do well at the D2 as well. But talking to the students, it became clear that when we talked about going to Mountain East might reduce the amount of travel time, the overnight trips, time away from class, and also what was nice about the D2 Mountain East Conference is the fact that I think the exposure students get in terms of championships and also media exposure is greater, that I think it would be a great learning experience for our students. And that really, I think, helped solidify in my mind that the D2 move was a good one.
Right. I guess looking at it from the presidential perspective, you just mentioned almost the entire constituency, right? Talking a little bit about alumni or donors, because there's a big aspect of now you're going to be a scholarship program. Tell me about those conversations. Was there any, were they on board immediately, or what did they think about it in terms of athletics?
It was interesting. I think it varies to some extent by sport, but in general, what we found with the alums, when talking with the alumni, there was intrigue. They were interested in knowing more about it. They were, I would say, whether or not they supported the move or not, and again, overwhelmingly, they have supported it. They were glad we were looking at it, that we weren't stagnant and just saying, okay, we're going to accept where we are, that they saw us moving forward. This past year, our football team, last couple of years, our football team has had quite a bit of success getting to the final 8 in Division III NCAA playoffs. And I know among a lot of the alums, they were anxious. They said, yeah, this is something we think we can do. And the alumni have really supported it. We've seen this as an opportunity to re-engage some alumni that may have, a number of years ago just disconnected from the university are now asking questions. They see a way of getting reconnected with the university.
Oh, yeah.
And again,
exciting.
one of the interesting things, alumni have talked to us about recruiting opportunities, because we see this as an opportunity to recruit additional students to the institution. And what we discovered is nearly over almost 700 Maryland students are playing D2 sports, either in the Mountain East or in Pennsylvania. And right now there's only one D2 school in Maryland, that being Bowie State. So we would be the second school. So we see this as an opportunity, in addition, to help some Maryland students who want to stay in state and play D2 to have the ability to do that. So again, it really captures the students. The alums are excited about it. We're getting a lot of interest. We have actually had alums come to us and say, can they now fund athletic scholarships, which is something that previous to this we couldn't. So we're engaging the alums, I think, in a very meaningful way.
It sounds like, as you went through that process of meeting with different constituencies to sell this idea and talk to them about moving to Division II, the excitement was probably in your eyes and in the words coming out of your mouth, because everybody seems to be on board with it. So the excitement had to grow with each meeting. Yeah,
and I agree, Ty, and I don't think I think people saw the excitement in my eye, and you heard it. At the same time, though, it was the question to them was, be partners with us, because, as you know, moving from one division to another involves a lot on the campus itself and making that happen. And we're in the early stages. We still have to submit the application for it formally next February. So there's work to be done as a result of feasibility study, but it is good to see the fact that as a leader, you don't want to be marching alone, and it's good to see that there are individuals that are supporting the decision and asking the right questions. And asking the right questions and getting the buy-in and having those discussions, I think, is critical to the success for us doing this possible move.
It is, excellent. And this is my last question here, and this is
Sure.
more relative to you and your position as president and the other places you've been. I think you served as the chair of the board for the Capital Athletic Conference. Your involvement with athletics, where you are now and in the past, how has that proven to be beneficial within the campus community? I mean, we can obviously see it here at Frostburg State, but just over time, how has your involvement with athletics proven to be a benefit as the president?
I think, Ty, in that instance, it's keeping things in perspective. Again, you started the conversation mentioning the fact that athletics complements, and it is an important role in today's, certainly in the United States, in higher education and in many institutions. Alumni, students get excited, faculty, staff get excited, the community gets excited by college athletics, and keeping it in perspective, making it real, and also, I think, ensuring that it's available to the students and to the faculty and staff. And we emphasized here the student experience. And so, one of the things you mentioned being the chair of the board of the Capital Athletic Conference, you come across with an appreciation for not just what I'll call the marquee sports, but all of the sports that the students are involved in. And so making sure that, I found that in the conference, working at the conference, people might say, oh, you've learned, to deal with working with the presidents and so forth. Well, we deal with presidents on a regular basis. It's working with the ADs, the senior women administrators, that really make a difference, as well as the student representatives. I'm always impressed with the quality of the student athlete who's representing various schools, and getting them engaged and making sure that, again, getting back maybe even that first question you asked about psychology, they have aspirations. How are we helping them achieve it? And they want to achieve it both on the classroom but also on the field or the court. And so it becomes very important that we keep that balance there. So I think, having been in my past, I've been at 2 D1 schools, 2 D2 schools, and now a D3 school. You see some similarities, you see some differences, and it's always, what's best for the culture of the institution. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that individual and helping them achieve their success.
Well, I can tell by this conversation that the director of athletics, the student athletes, the coaches, everybody who works in athletics there is very excited and really appreciates having a president who supports what they're trying to do there over in athletics at Frostburg State University. I really appreciate you joining us here on One Question.
Well, thank you, Ty, and thank you for the nice words. And I really enjoyed talking to you, and I will follow more of your podcasts and wish you the best in the future.
I appreciate it. That was Dr. Ron Nowaczyk. He's the president at Frostburg State University, and this is Ty Brown with one question. And keep in mind, the role of a leader is to create and maintain an environment that people want to be a part of. And as always, be better tomorrow than you are today. This episode of One Question is produced by Spades Media Group, solving problems using creative leadership.